So that was an afterthought, I thought, kind of like, I mean, they were more concerned about their development and the 47 that they were approved for.
Right, and we talked about, I mean, numerous engineering and technical difficulties with it, you know, going over with them the lay of the land and running the sewer and how difficult it was for them to get that plan done. That's what their position was, and you know, they wanted to try to figure out, they're trying to figure out what their best options are. I mean, I can't speak for them, I'm sure they'd say this, they'd probably say that.
Okay.
And they wanted to increase the density to make it more profitable, was that?
To cover what they'd have to do, because they wanted to, they looked back at going down 29, but the thing is, we have an ordinance that they can't go deeper than 18 feet, so then it would put a lot of grinder pumps in the 48 lot subdivision, which, you know, it isn't fair to the people to have a grinder pump. So they're looking at, you know, a different angle to try and do whatever they can do to make it work easier.
Gotta go, bye.
Okay, so do they plan to come back?
We have no idea. Again, if they have an idea or any kind of proposal for some sort of relief or some sort of idea for making a change to their plan, you know, we said submit it to the planning commission, get on their agenda, and try to move forward there, see if you can.
Great. So as far as DeSanta, Rhodes, Rose, Sahaki, those tracts of land, nothing?
I have, nothing to my knowledge has come in for interest at this point.
Okay.
Linda Jansen, Simmons Road, regarding the Melbourne Hills, and you were saying that their biggest challenge, and this is why they want higher density, is for sewers. Well, Act 26 was passed. I think Ms. Schuler knows about that. That was allowing, because before, when it was residential planned communities, they were required to have public sewer, public water. But the Pennsylvania legislature just passed Act 26, I believe, maybe September 17th of last year, saying that now they, with all the improvements with on-lot systems and things like that, that larger residential communities could utilize on-lot systems as opposed to the sewer. So perhaps that's something that they could look into, and maybe even not the 47, but it may make it cost effective for them to at least be able to utilize that land. And then that way they could, you know, the sewer isn't the issue, the doubling the density isn't the issue. And I believe that when Act 26 was brought up, you said that that might make it easier for some developers to develop, because they weren't, because of that they weren't tied into the, you know, connecting with the sewer. So it might be something, if they meet again with you folks, perhaps you could suggest that. And maybe they won't get the full 47 homes, but, you know, maybe 25 with on-lot sewers would work really well in that area. And it's better than the 115 townhouses they were asking
We know
for.
that.
Brian Hill, 11 Zieglerville Road. I would severely object to the township considering that as an option. I am one of the products that has an on-site system that is failing on small lots, and looking for the township to continue to work with developers or whomever can provide access for public for those who do not have access to public. This area, this property, water tables are extremely high. They don't receive sewage very well, and the zoning, the way it is right now, the systems, you just don't have enough property to put an on-site system that will function properly.
Phil Smith, 205 Gerloff Road, also Planning Commission. I think the issue here is a deferred, position that the Planning Commission interact with the developer if they so desire. And I think all options will be brought on the table. In all fairness to you, Brian, I know you have an issue and a need to rectify some situations there, but I think in the discussion with the planning commission, we would be happy to look at all the options and not close the door to any, including the new Act 26 regulations and how they might apply there. There are also other options that I think, perhaps Carol or others will be bringing to the table, so I think at that time, that would be the place in which to have that discussion.
Just for the board's information, the Act 26 issue is that for sewage planning before this passed, you had to consider for on-lot treatment, whether there's sufficient capacity to treat with an in-ground or a sand mound type system or spray irrigation. Those were the only choices for sewage planning. For actual installation, there's, I think, up to a dozen now different alternative systems. Micro mound is one that comes to mind off the tip of my tongue. That don't take up as much area and are a little more forgiving of smaller lot sizes to meet criteria. Act 26 said, okay, now for sewage planning, instead of just looking at the on-lot in-ground installation or the on-lot spray irrigation, which both require large land areas or very good soils, now you can look at some of these alternative systems in your sewage planning. So if you wanted to subdivide a lot, that might let you make your lots a little smaller and use one of these alternative systems instead. It wouldn't go as small as what's on the proposal now, so Ms. Jansen is correct that they would not get 47 or 48 lots by doing that. It would be a significant reduction in the number of lots. But that's the information on what that's about, what Act 26 did.
Diane Jurin, 9 Zieglerville Road.
What was the name, ma'am?
Diane Jurin, 9 Zieglerville Road. What is the township's responsibility in providing public sewer through Act 537? So there were several different problem-solving ways for people in the township that Act 537 presented. And Melbourne Hills was one of the ways to solve the problem, but there were other ways as well. And I think there's a time frame in there, and we're closely approaching it. So what is the township's responsibility for providing this? You've got 3 different ways that you could go. It looks like Melbourne Hills isn't going to move quickly enough to solve it that way. Maybe they will. I guess I really want to know from the township, when are you going to provide us with public sewer on the road? I've moved here 30 years ago, and I've been hearing we're going to get it.
And you're where again? I'm sorry.
9 Zieglerville Road, over the next
Diane
line.
and I are
Gotcha.
Okay. Lynn Jansen, Simmons Road, in the Act 537 plan, there is a solution that probably could be instituted tomorrow. It's called the West Route. It would actually run a line, and Ms. Schuler can probably explain it better than I, but it's basically, you have a manhole right there, right up in front of Mr. Lee's. That's how close you are to the sewers. You can just run it down there, and then up there, and if memory serves correct, and yeah, I don't have my Act 537 stuff with me, but it would serve the 7 lots right down there, and it was an estimated cost of $136,000.
And that's what I am asking about. I know there were 3 different ways to solve the problem, and I'm just wondering which
And now,
one.
that was
when-
the least expensive and probably the quickest to institute, at least in my opinion, and then that would solve both of your problems.
Yeah, I don't have an answer on the when. I just don't have that. The township has a project permitted for installing sewer on Riverside and Fulmer that's waiting to get started because there are some questionable systems over there as well. And it's really up to the direction that the board wants to take things at this point.
I wonder, could it be, I mean, since that, it seems like these people have suffered for a while, and in the scheme of, large municipal projects, I don't wanna say $136,000 isn't a lot of money, but it really isn't that much money. A lot of times there's grants available. Could perhaps maybe when the next grant comes out, you know, like if the township, you know, it doesn't have 100, as you say, Riverside, Babington, Fulmer are slated first, but perhaps if grant money could be applied for, or, you know, even to pay for half of it, it might expedite the project, their project. And then that's not saying that you can't change the configuration, I don't think, at a later time, but at least you could run that little spur line off of the existing sewer right there in front of Mr.
No,
Lee's.
you're talking about a low-pressure system, you're talking about each
It was, I thought it was
resident.
a force main, I mean, it was in your Act 537 plan, I believe
When
it
you
was
say a force
option
main,
number
a
2,
force
the
main-
west route.
Would
And
you
it-
like me to answer? When you talk about a force main, you're talking about, a force main carries pumped material. So if there's not a public pump station, you're talking about a low-pressure system where each resident has their own grinder pump that contributes to the system. So this is a mechanical solution that frankly is subject to failure, because all things mechanical fail. But what you do is you put a grinder pump for each house, and they all connect to a force main with check valves, and then that's pushed up to a manhole. So that's the kind of solution that I believe you're talking about. The Act 537 plan was compiled 5 years ago. I don't have all of it on the top of my head right now.
I believe it was
Well, we looked at-
alternate number 2, the
We looked
west
at
route.
grinder pumps both going up towards 29, and the problem there was crossing the Goshen hopping. You really have to go well under the Goshen hopping and back up again. The other alternative was grinder pump up to the manhole at the top of the hill, which might be more feasible, but it's been 5 years since I looked at it.
It's on, that portion's still on the website.
Burns, Zieglerville Road. At our last meeting, Terry, I mentioned about the Ragusa track and having the board make sure that the funds were gonna be put into escrow and whatnot. I looked that up, it's chapter 145-16, and it talks about what they have to do prior to starting. Doesn't matter, as Carol Schuler stated, that if Montgomery County gives them the go-ahead, they can go ahead and start. They have to fulfill their agreement. The developer's agreement and the homeowner's agreement's part of that. So have we heard anything since the last meeting?
Kevin, we haven't heard nothing, have we? I didn't think so. As far as I know, we haven't.
The start date now.
Well, no, but what I'm saying is,
Yeah.
have we gotten the homeowner's agreement for the solicitor to look at? I mean, you know, it's bad enough that,
Haven't gotten nothing.
Not received that.
When do we need
And when we do, we're gonna give it to the
before,
attorney right
before
away.
they start, or after, when does that require the HOA?
well, if you read the 145-16, it's pretty much spells it out. Excuse me,
It's
okay.
part of their conditional approval.
So we have to have that before they get
They can
final.
start.
Okay. So that makes it pretty simple. We have to have that before they start.
You have to have that before the plans are recorded.
And they haven't recorded the plans yet?
The plans are not recorded.
HOA
because
documents typically recorded with the plans.
They haven't, they still have to meet all the conditions of final approval before the plans are recorded. And that includes putting up the escrow,
And the HOA documents.
right.
Wasn't there a 90-day time period that follows the approval that the board gave? So we're already past the 90 days because that was given, final approval was given on November 9th or 8th, whatever day it was.
Well, I'll bump that question to the attorney and maybe you can answer it at next week's meeting, because I don't think you've been involved in this too far along.
No, but the 90-day period is quite often passed on developments all over the state. And the Board of Supervisors will essentially make a motion to approve the plans that are submitted, that they're in conformity with the final approved plans. They can essentially, the way that it's dealt with is they issue an extension. That it's a pretty administrative extension that is provided for the recording of the plans. Never seen it done another way, because the final approval is a vested right.
Well, they just came in 3 weeks ago asking for a change from impervious paving to standard paving. So are they gonna update the plan set? Will it be a new plan set for that, or is that just gonna be a waiver?
No, I'm still waiting for the final plan set that would be the recorded plan. They've got a list of conditions to meet, including answering the comments in my letter. And that plan has to come back for final review before it's recommended forward for signature and recording.
Then Carol, do you remember, I remember reading 6 months ago about the lot that's gonna be turned over to the township, the 2.2 acre lot. Doesn't that state that that has to be done first?
The open space part.
The open space portion? I believe there was some kind of
I
language.
think that gets done when the plan's recorded.
No, what I'm saying is whatever grading or changes to that 2.2 acre lot, I believe it states something to the nature that that gets done in the development of the whole site. That's supposed to be done first. And I know at one of the meetings that we had, it was brought up that all those cedar trees underneath the power lines get cut down as soon as they get started, which are causing a site clearance coming off of Schwenk Road.
Right.
And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Ernie could probably tell us, wasn't there something brought up, Ernie, about several of those poles being relocated as well?
Well, there is a site plan with that where new poles are gonna get set, or, be moved, well, the developer pays for that.
Right.
For pole relocations pursuant to, the ultimate right of way and things like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the question is.
Well, basically, that was one of the things that the residents were asking, and I believe that the board and the meeting, the way I understood it was, yes, they would take care of those trees, because not only were the trees in the way, they were gonna also be in the way for the pole relocation.
Yes, my understanding from a conversation I had last month with the Victory Garden people was that when they get the go-ahead to go back in there, their first thing was to chip the trees that were down. The second, I think I reported on this in the last meeting, the first thing is to chip up the trees that are down. The second is to do clearing right around the perimeter so they can install the ENS. And then the third thing they were going to do was work on those cedar trees along the frontage of Zieglerville and Schwenk to deal with the pole relocations next. So you're right, those cedar trees are very early on, and you're right, that's gonna help our sight distance out there.
Thank you.
Okay. I do want to announce I do need to have a short executive session to discuss some litigation matters.
And everybody don't forget the Easter egg hunt Saturday. So you don't know.
I guess to have a motion to recess.
Can I make one more comment? Brian Hill, 11 Zagua. I attended a superintendent roundtable meeting this past Wednesday at the Perkiomen Valley High School. It had to do with the issue of the high schoolers walking out regarding the shooting down in Florida, and them speaking out about gun control and the public awareness of it. During that discussion, there was mention of the biggest concern they have, not Perkiomen Valley, since we have our own local police, is that some of the surrounding boroughs that do not have require state troopers to respond to these, which obviously has a delay in response. That may be someone that you want to reach out to be at this public meeting regarding regional policing. But they had mentioned something to the nature that there had been discussion, or they had been approached to the local townships about working together, and it didn't seem to work out. I would just ask you to maybe reach out to these school districts and talk to them as two entities that can surely help with situations that we surely have not seen this in Perkiomen Valley, nor in some of the surrounding school districts, but nor had Ditch, Florida. And I'd ask that you would work in conjunction with our school boards in protecting our children, because these seem to be hot areas for these types of activities to continue. It's not the issues of guns, it's the issue of people who are making bad decisions with guns. And we need to be able to identify these people faster than they can be entering buildings with assault rifles. So I asked the township and the police department of each of the pilot townships would work in conjunction with our school boards to help work on plans. The school district is currently working on their tactics. Our school district has not committed to having armed individuals in the buildings, but we saw the result of the situation that happened in Lower Maryland, where a person entered into a building and within several minutes, that person was taken down because there was someone in the building that was armed and could take care of the situation. So I'm not a gun advocate and I'm a non-gun advocate, but I am an advocate for saving lives of children that aren't, that are sitting ducks in schools. That seem to be the hot topic of, so I'd ask you to put that on an agenda of some sort, working with the school boards. Thank you.
That's a really good suggestion. I believe that our police chief has had discussions in the recent past with the school district about that. I mean, our challenge is we don't have enough resources to provide that, but that's something in the future certainly be talking about more, I believe.
Okay. Motion to recess?
Motion to adjourn,
Recess.
recess, I'm sorry.